You have 4 minutes too.
A little early, but that's all right.
Okay.
It's good practice for you, my friend.
Well, yeah, that could be.
We'll be here. We got lots of people
Okay.
here to help you.
So we're not hearing any echoes. That's a good thing. Okay.
You okay with the
Yeah.
video?
Pardon?
Are you okay
Actually,
with it?
Chris is doing the video,
Oh, okay.
I am.
aren't
Wait a
you?
minute.
No, the other Chris.
I thought is
You want me to start it?
which Chris are we talking about? KP
You, I
or
thought, weren't you going to do the videos?
I thought Pat was, because Pat's here.
Oh, okay. Well, whoever, whichever one of you guys wants to do it, but
Pat,
Oh,
are
yeah.
you doing it or am I?
I'll do it for you.
Okay. Woohoo!
I can mess it up.
okay, it's 2 minutes till.
Make me host.
Make you host.
Yes, please.
Make host. You're it.
We'll do the 48 second, I guess it is.
Well, you're
So-
already live on YouTube, so just go ahead.
Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kellow MMR.
Well, good evening and welcome. So happy that you could be here tonight. And Pat, if you could put me on the screen, please.
Yep.
This is a show where mentors help modelers build. And we really appreciate you coming this evening and hope you'll come back often and tell your friends about our show. I'd like to start the show with a prayer from Father Ron Walters. Pat, if you could play that for me, please, because Father Walters is not able to be with us tonight.
O God, as we express our creativity by creating in miniature the world around us, may we marvel at the beauty and genius which created the world and instilled in us a portion of your great knowledge and wisdom. Give success to the work of our hands, O God. Amen.
And Pat, if you could come to me, please. Anyway, we have another show Saturday at 1 p.m., every Saturday at 1 p.m. With Chris Blackmar and his guest. And I hope that you'll attend those. Those are all about scratch building. I personally love to scratch build. That's basically what I do anymore. And I think you'll learn an awful lot about scratch building and the intricacies of it by watching the show on Saturday afternoon. It's at 1 o'clock every Saturday. I also want to talk about our build-alongs a little bit. We have one coming up that's, I think, going to be very, very interesting. You'll hear more about it next week. But this is going to be learning how to do a CAD drawing. And Earl Hackett is going to be running this part of the show for us. And Earl is going to show you how to download a free program and use that program to design a 3D model of a girder bridge. And then we're going to have it printed out, 3D printed. And then Earl is going to actually build the girder bridge from the parts that have been created. The part of the build along that's going to be fun is that everybody will be able to download the software for free and work along with Earl as he is designing the kit or the parts for the kit in a CAD drawing on this software. So you'll be able to learn the software and hopefully that'll help you in the future learn how to design your own parts in 3D drawing. And we have a company now that is agreed to work with us to try to get the parts printed for anybody that would like to have them printed. And the company's name is the numeric 3, dptrains.com is their website. It's owned by David and Kristen Kimmick. And I think that you'll meet them next week when Earl goes into more detail about what's going to be involved here. This is going to be a lengthy process because we're going to make sure that everybody can keep up and everybody totally understands the intricacies of using the 3D technology and what's involved in getting the articles printed, as well as then using the parts to actually build the model and paint it, so forth. So I think it's going to be fascinating. I'm getting a lot of interest by people asking when exactly is it going to start and so forth. And Earl and Kristen will be here next week to give more details about it and to go into answer your questions about how it's going to be started, what the software is going to be that he's going to be using, how to download it, and that kind of thing. And that's going to, the actual start of that show is going to be on July the 13th is when we're going to actually start the instructions on how to do the CAD drawings. But next week, we're going to introduce the program in much more detail and try to give you an idea of exactly what's going to be involved and what you can expect. Then on July 23rd, we have a card model that's been designed by Paul Egret that two people are going to be building. David Wright and Father Ron are both going to build it in card. Both of them are going to be using different techniques of card modeling. So I think that'll be interesting for you too. We have many more of these scheduled throughout the year. We're scheduling now into January of the following year, 2023. So we have a lot more coming that I think that you'll be interested in. And don't forget, we also have Bill Banner and Banner Models starting his next week, in fact. So I'd like now to go and run the video for our My Bill of Dan Darby's company, who is a sponsor for My Bill. So Pat, if you could run that video for me.
Welcome to the world of scale, O&S railroading. We are your resource for all O&S scale modeling. Both our magazines are advertiser supported and free to read online, download as a PDF, or even print. All advertisers are hot linked to their website, so if you see something you like, just click. Please check out our websites for the current issues. All back issues available free for the O-Scale Resource and the S-Scale Resource magazines. And, if you are a manufacturer, distributor, or retail establishment, please contact us through our website for advertising opportunities.
I really do appreciate Dan and Amy Darty for sponsoring this part of our shows. Because what they're trying to do with their magazines is bring modeling back into model railroading. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, and particularly with the My Bill segments, where we're trying to encourage you to show your modeling and share it with other people so that they get the benefit of seeing exactly what can be done in building for model railroading. Chris Coarse is the moderator for this segment of the show. So Chris, would you like to talk about the My Bills a little bit?
Sure. Forgot to put the slide up, but for those that would like to participate, the next My Build is, crap, where's the date? It is the 22nd.
29th.
I'm sorry, it's 29th or other, yes.
Yep.
All right, June 29th. To participate, go ahead and email me. I'll put my email address in the chat. And just whatever you're working on, or maybe something you've done, or you're thinking about doing and you need some help with. Whatever the case may be, we'd love to see what you've got to offer and see what you're thinking. So anyway, it's railrunner130@hotmail.com to participate. So send me those photos and we'll get you right into the My Builds. Back to you, Jim.
Don't forget a picture of yourself.
Yep, that's true. And a description of what the model is that you're showing, so that we can include that in the magazine article, because everybody that shows their models on the show, they'll also be included in one of my articles in the next magazine that is coming out. So I hope that I hope we get a lot of participants in there. We seem to be getting more each month, and I think that's great. So the more the merrier, and we'd love to see what you're working on and what you've built, or the things that you're having problems with, either way. So with that said, I'd like to now turn to Bob Farquhar for our quick tip of the evening. Paul Thompson is still not up to snuff, and he can't be with us tonight. And again, Bob Farquhar has agreed to step in for our new tip. So Bob, welcome.
Okay, guys, this is most modelers have these optivisors or some kind of magnifying things, especially as we're getting older. This particular one has an LED light in it and a little loop in here to get closer to the modeling. And we'll full screen here. Come on, there we go. So but the only problem with this particular one, you can change the lens on if you get the lenses, if you do have them available, but it's going to be a pain. So what I've done, this is what I bought. This is looking down on one on the left here, is looking down on it. This is where your nose sits in here. These arms can be removable and a strap put in if you want to do a strap. And this is looking down from the front. And this is these are the lenses here. They snap in and out really quickly. There's an LED bright light, and it's really bright. So the little kit that comes with 5 different lenses, 1 times 1.5, 2, 2.5, and a 3. So as you age and you need more magnification, you just drop this thing out from here and then it snaps right in again. It's quick to do. There's an example of it on the Amazon if you ever want one. Another type is this one here. I have this one as well, and again, you could take these arms off, put the loop in there, put it behind your head if you want. Then they turn on the LEDs from this little turtle things here. But it also comes with a bunch of other lenses, like 4 lenses altogether, 4 sets of lenses. So I have them, but it's a bit of a pain because when you're trying to turn on light on or off, you actually end up moving these things because these things will swivel up out of the way if you like. But that's a tip for today.
No, thanks so very much. That's a great idea. Really appreciate. I've never seen those before.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Bob. Well, now I'd like to go back to Chris Coarse. Chris, of course, owns Conowingo Models, and he came out with a new kit called the Kellow Trolley Station. which he's building, doing a build along on our show. So Chris, I will turn it over to you, sir.
All right, thanks, Jim. And we'll go ahead and get share screen moving here. All right. So welcome to the tonight's build along of Kellow Station. We're doing both HO and O scales. If you haven't purchased your kit yet, please go to conowingomodels.com, and for the HO scale kit, use Jim HO, where it asks for a discount code, and it'll give you a pretty decent discount. And same thing for the O scale kit, but the discount code on it is Jim O. And as a reminder, it's not valid on any other items, and it's good through June 15th, which is the last day of the show, of the build alongs rather. All right, and episode 2, we're going to cover window and door prep, assembly of the end walls, shingling the roof, and then we're finally going to start beginning the assembly. And as a reminder, some parts may look slightly different between the scales and the pilot model, between the scales and also between them and the pilot model, because as we built the pilot model, a few things changed here and there to make it make construction a little bit easier, make the parts a little more durable, those sorts of things. And also some illustrations may not look like the instructions due to the improvements that we've made during that construction. All right, window and door prep. First thing you're going to do is glue the acetate pieces into the windows. I know some people like to use glass, magnifying glass, that sort of stuff. Personally, I just like to use the acetate windows that came with that came with the doors and windows. Next thing you're going to want to do is cut the cardstock for the window shades. You want to vary the heights. Do not cut the shades for the door transom or the decorative upper windows. I guess you could, but I've never really seen a whole lot done with that. Of course, the door shades are optional, and but whatever you do, you want to add proof of life on there. And the shades can also be used to hide an empty interior. Optional, but recommended. We use the shades and the doors and windows, and you want to put these in place first, I've found, because as we put this thing together, I actually, on the pilot models, I put the windows in after I constructed it, and I've got fat fingers and things that just made things more difficult that way. Glue the window shades into place. You want to vary the heights and possibly occasionally angle 1 or 2 windows to add kind of a proof of life. You don't want things perfect, because then it just looks too perfect. It doesn't look right. And then once you're done with that, we recommend gluing the doors and windows into their respective openings. We'll move on to end wall assembly. The graphic on this page is a little bit, I tried to make it easy, but I think I may have may not quite have hit the mark with it. But basically what you're going to want to do is, and this is for the O scale kit, the HO is slightly different, but it ought to be just basically squares instead of circles for the upper window there. So what you're going to want to do is move the decorative gingerbread triangular piece on top of one of the respective outer wall, and then except for the number 3, the outer wall overhang, you're going to put that onto a triangular piece of board and batten, and that goes onto the supports there. Then what you're going to want to do is take the outer walls and then glue them to the respective supports that are numbered 1. And there's a picture of it, because I'm sure I just totally screwed up how I wanted that said. So hopefully the picture says better than I can. So that's what you're looking at right there, is those outer walls, except the one on the right, attached as it needs to be. Next, we're going to do some shingling. Some people like to take and put pencil marks at like 1/4 inch or whatever on the way up. What I did on this one is I took and put a starter strip on the bottom, and I just tried to match up the bottom of the V's with the bottom of that starter strip. And then basically you're making an X pattern all the way up. I used one sheet or one piece per row and went all the way up that way. And it seemed to work out exactly on for what it's supposed to be for the HO. The O scale, you ended up with some extra. And if you want to use some different styles or colors, recommend going to rail scale models and getting some different shingling from them if that's what you want to do. Now in some of these kits, because I guess there's a shortage of the gluing material, a lot of them came with self-adhesive backed strips. Some kits did not. So if that's you, then what I recommend doing is using some Aleen's, just a light coat over there. Only do maybe about 1/4 or 1/2 inch at a time with the glue, and then putting that row of shingles down. Because if you do, let's say you do the whole thing at once, what'll end up happening is you'll end up with you'll be working into dried glue, and that's not what you want, because you want a narrow roofing on there. You don't want to have layers and layers of glue on top of each other. It's not going to look right. All right. And then also be careful. You've got the, when you do this shingling, you'll notice in the upper left corner, last week we had taken and put down a little strip there for the guide, or for the, where the two pieces of roof come together, that roof hinge there. And so you want the roof hinge, you want to start on the downside of that and then work your way up. And then of course you're going to want to repeat this for the other side. All right, so we're going to move on a little bit to beginning the assembly. You're going to take the end wall, the one you see in the middle here, and you're going to want to glue the ridge beam to it. Make sure that that is number one matches up with the number one that is on the ridge beam. What you should be able to do with that is set it up at a 90-degree angle, because what's going to happen next week is we're going to start to add pieces into it, and then they're all going to literally hopefully fall into place if you did it right. So what you could do is you could put those extra beams on there, but don't drop them into the slots just yet. All right, so this one was kind of a quick one. It is going to take a little bit of work to get through, but hopefully it won't be as much homework as it was last week. So again, for episode 2, your homework is ensure all parts are painted, ensure your roof is shingled, ensure your doors and windows and window shades are in place, and ensure the ridge beam is firmly in place with that number one end wall. And I think that'll, once we get that done, then we'll be in a good spot to continue on next week and assemble the main building. All right. Are there any questions?
Well, you must have covered everything, Chris. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
I hope so. I feel like I babbled my way through it. I apologize if I did. That's why I wanted to record it.
Yeah, but listen, as long as the building turns out as nice as that one looks like it's going to be, then you've got no problem.
All righty.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to turn to Martin Breckfield, MMR, who is building an old kit for us. Martin, welcome.
Evening, Jim.
How are you?
Oh, another fun day.
Good. In paradise. Got
Oh, let's not get overly optimistic.
it.
Reality usually intrudes. Okay, come on. There we go. Part 2 from last week. We're going to look at the ends and the sides. We're going to do more than that, but that's what came up first. Last week, we stopped right after building a box. You know, it's really a high-tech term. We built a box. You got four sides, it's a box. Now we got to close it in. So we glue the scribe siding that was supplied onto the ends. I use carpenter's glue. I'm not going to get too complicated with this. And trim off the excess. Some rubber bands come in real handy for this, 5 or 6. You want to bend it nice and carefully so it doesn't break and crack and what have you. But you also want to get a nice even coat of that glue, carpenter's glue, on, you know, tight bond 1, 2, whichever you like, on there, because then this won't split 10, 20 years later. It'll all be one contiguous unit. And you can see once this is in here, once you got the end on, you can see we're not done up here yet. And we have a little bit of overhang. Well, we want a little overhang because there should be some overhang here. But now we know how far we can get back down into the side without compromising this overhang. You want to roll this back with some sanding blocks. So, you know, it's the 2x4 sanding block with some 100 grit paper in it. And you just sit down and play with it and run it over, roll it over this curve until it's smooth and you can get these little pieces out of here. It just takes a little patience and time. Put on some good music, a cold drink, and don't get the sanding dust in your drink unless you want to. Okay, so now we got to go around the corner to put the sides in. This gets fun here. So you're turning the corner, and what they supplied is a piece of quarter round, which didn't come out real good in the photo. It's a little more visible here. This is a quarter round. You can see it's sort of up here. And that gets glued into this piece of right angle wood stock to make this piece right here. So that's how you turn the corner on this kit. You glue the quarter round into the angle stock. It's like the lime and the coconut. You drink them both together. It's the quarter round into the angle stock, and you glue them both together. And then you glue this into the corner, and now you have a nice tight right angle to fit the scribed end stock against the side stock. And this is also fairly deep because remember that side stock is fairly thick scribed plywood. So you want to fit this carefully. And you want to fit it carefully for the obvious reason. You want nice clean joints here, here, and in the middle. So getting the first one's easy. Getting the other two is a little trickier because you may not have this 100% perfectly straight on both these. So you may want to touch this with the sand, that same 2x4 with the 100 grit paper on it. Just sneak up on it. Make sure it fits 100% perfect in that against that joint versus the top. You may have to just take a half a degree or 2 off. This piece over here, you may have to cut a board or 2 width off. So you want to get a really, really, really brand new sharp knife to do this because you're going with the grain, against the grain, and with the grain again. It'll splinter if you're not careful, so don't rush it. Use a steel ruler, cut up against that. Take it easy and slow until you get it where you want. Cut it long. If you cut it short, it's hard to put it back on. Cutting it long and then sand it to fit. So you want to sneak up on it with a sanding block. Make sure it fits. Get this end here first, or get one of the 2 ends first, and then make the other one fit with the sanding block. It's the only way I know to do that without making a mess. And you don't want to start over with it because there's no extra parts. And you could make new sides if you wanted to, but that's just painful. So glue and weight. And yeah, that is a piece of lead wrapped in vinyl. They make lead bricks. So it's actually safe, theoretically safe to your hands. Like you're going to actually stick the brick in your mouth. That's a couple of pounds, and I have 4 of those. So when I need to weight something down or glue it down, and I actually have 2 or 3 lead bricks that, well, they're not lead brick, full-size lead bricks, because those are 32 pounds, but or 38 pounds, I've forgotten. But I have some small fragments of lead bricks that I use for weighting things down. So no rush here. Put a brick on it. Come back a couple hours after the glue is set. That's what you get. Okay, so there's a bit of a seam there, but I don't think it's too heinous. Came out actually probably better than I thought I was going to get it to work. I probably paid attention, actually was more careful than I normally am. So you got one side done, flip it over and do the other side. It's just that easy. Okay, now that you got the 2 sides glued, now you have fun putting all this stuff on each side. So you got a diagram that tells you where to put stuff. Put that trim board on first, because that tells you where everything else goes below it. You got to fit the door runner piece of metal, the little piece of Z metal. You got to make a door. If they give you the stock, you have all these little parts and pieces. I actually did use their nails for once, but I drill out the hole, a drop of ACC CA on the little pin, push it in, and I drill a hole slightly smaller, so there's actually some friction there. So it's actually doing its job. Grab irons, stirrup steps. Those are actually from a US Hobbies kit, and these are Tishi grab irons. I'm not going to use staples and bend wire that's already been bent and curled and straighten it back out and bend it again. We've got decent commercial grab irons available for a reasonable price. You should use them. Don't waste time making your own grab irons unless you need something of a specific prototype dimension. Some nut bolt washer castings on little stops for the door. So yeah, I did not cut open a door opening because the door is glued in place. And if you cut open a door opening, well, you got to have a perfect door opening. And that's painful with plywood, getting it perfectly straight. And then you have to put a piece of 1x stock or 2x stock around the perimeter of it to make it look nice and smooth and clean. I'm never going to open the doors of any of my cars. I'm not sure why people like to do that. They provided a piece of tin plate steel, and that gets bent and wrapped around the ends. It covers up that ugly end grain. And a little bit of goo on the wood, a little bit of CA, smeared around, nice thin film of goo, some CA after you got the tin plated steel pre-bent into place. Push it into place, hold it there for a few seconds. It's not going anywhere, and that's done. And yeah, the stirrup steps, I drilled and pinned those as well. I test glue those in place with some goo, but then I just come back and re-drill the holes and drop pin. Those are actual clothing pins. I just nip them short and pre-drill a hole and push them in. Okay. Roof walk supports go down first on the roof. And then it's canvas and tar paper time. That's single ply napkin that's been lapped and glued down. It's about 50% aqueous. Carpenter's glue is what I like to use. And you get to these little corners, you got all kinds of funky compound curve things going on here. Square pieces don't wrap around those neatly. Triangles will work. So if you use a series of triangles, you can get around the corner and overlap them. It's tedious and slow, but it looks better than trying to make wood look nice, perfectly smooth. I said, why bother? The roof on these weren't bare wood painted anyhow. Let's put something on it that actually comes close. Okay. Underbody, we put the car bolsters on. I don't bother to screw these in place. It's goo and CA. They're not coming back off. They're tapped and drilled, tapped for 440, and they're not going to come off again. The K-brake is a precision scale casting. I've just replaced it because the old K-brake that came with these was way too crude. I know it's on the underbody. You're never going to see it. I know it's there. You'll know it's there. You want something that looks decent, even if you're not going to see it very much. If you have your track at near eye level, you'll notice it though. Okay, queen posts inserted into the needle beams after they were glued in place, put in place according to the plans. Truss rods, that was the steel wire that was supplied with the kit. That was all bent. And those queen posts actually have a hole in them. They don't, the wire doesn't rest on top. It actually gets threaded through an eye of each queen post. So it's a little annoying, but once it's through, you know it's not coming out. It's not going to pop off. So you get it bent. It's soft steel. I replaced the turnbuckle castings, which were really crude, with some turnbuckles from T-Shi. You just drill out the, ream out the T-Shi turnbuckles a little bit, slide one on one end, slide it on the other end, a little bit of CA. Turnbuckles are on, you're done. Now you can put more underbody onto this if you want to, but that's pretty much the limit of what I do on traction freight cars. And that's where we're going to stop here before we get into radial couplers and painting. So that's the end of this for this week. If there's any questions, scream them out now.
Anybody have any questions for Martin?
Martin, I wanted to ask you, last week, the roof, as you were shaping the roof,
yeah,
it looked like it could be a bit problematic. Like you were saying, if somebody takes off too much material, it's shot.
It is and it isn't. You can fill it back into something as long as you don't take a half an inch off of it too far. If you take a couple of millimeters, that's what wood filler's for.
Well, my question though is, what do you think about the idea of somebody doing a 3D print of that type of roof for a kit like that?
I'm waiting for John Wobble of All Nation to do just that.
Oh,
I'm hoping he'll do it because the dimensions of and the width dimensions of these roofs are not the standard clerestory roof profile that you can get from Northeastern. I have some traction roof stock laying around in my shop. I got compulsive about that when I went to like the Chicago O-Scale meet in Indianapolis or any meet, when I would take a ruler out and I was like checking all the clerestory roof to say, yeah, that piece is a traction roof. I'll buy that one. You can have the other 5. Or if I have to buy all 6 to get the one, fine, I'll sell the other 5. But, I want the traction one because I don't know where to get it. So, yeah, a 3D printed one. And, hey, the nice thing about it, if you do it 3D, you can make it hollow. Make it light. There's no reason for it to be solid. Oh, yeah, and Indianapolis Car Company years ago had these in styrene, clear styrene. And there were 2 pieces. You put them together in the middle. So you could cut it, left and right, long ways. There was a split long ways. But if you were too long, you wanted it 10 inches or 2 inches shorter, you just cut a section out of the middle, filed it smooth, and put it back together, and melted the styrene together. And those worked great. You see those every now and then for sale on eBay or on some dealer's table at some show. That's another good reason to head out to shows. You find strange stuff laying around on people's tables for a couple of bucks and filling the need or filling a future need that you think you may or may not need, but want to have anyhow. You have to strike when the iron's hot on those types of things.
Hey, Martin, one thing that I think might be interesting, if you could maybe do it next time, is show the K-brake cylinder and some of those parts that back when that kit came out, they were fantastic. I mean, I remember looking at them and thinking, gee, well, isn't that a great thing for the kit? And to show what is available today versus what was considered back then to be state of the art, I think would be interesting for everybody.
Don't know if I can do that or not. I'll have to go look for other parts and see what I have.
Okay.
So half the time I don't use the precision scale or anybody else's K brake. I'll substitute in a brake casting from Q-Car.
Yep.
Which comes, which then you get the levers and hooked into the air cylinder front and back.
Yep.
Those are a little more interesting, and you can hook wire out of those into and have it run under the various pieces to hide where they should be terminating, give you the illusion of functionality. But I have to find out if I have a car. I got to dig a car out of my stock on the shelf and see if I actually have one with that type of brake on it.
If you do that, I think that would be interesting because, back then, whatever was in the kit, that's what we used. I mean, seriously, because
I know
there wasn't anything else available. There weren't alternatives to that. If the manufacturer was kind enough to include something in the kit, my gosh, you used it.
Yeah, and the only alternatives was something equally crude from somebody else.
Yeah.
There's just that many.
Yep.
There's just not that many choices.
So anyway, if you can next time, I think that would be. Thank you so much for this evening.
I'll have to dig that out and see if I've got. I have to go look through my cars. I've been going through all my cars recently and actually been weeding out the inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
So now I'd like to turn to Christopher Smith. And Chris has a great layout that uses the new NMRA system of LCC on his layout. And he's here to talk to us about tonight and how it helps him. So Chris, thank you so much for coming.
Hello, everybody. All right. Let's see, are we sharing so far? Can you see?
Yes.
Okay. So last time we talked about why perhaps would we want to use layout control. And we define it as a control system for the whole layout that uses a communication bus network. So this time, what we're going to do, what we did last time is we defined the layout control network bus in general. We talked about two general bus configurations, why we might use them, but almost as important, why you wouldn't need an LCC or a layout control bus for your layout. And we want to make that point just in case there's some temptation to jump on the hype over layout control. So tonight what we'll do is we'll finish up by talking about how I use layout control on my particular layout, and then perhaps a quick summary. A little bit about me. I've been modeling since the 60s, primarily N scale. I built my DC system, and I also built a 9-node CMRI layout control bus system for an operating layout. I want to reiterate what I mentioned last time. For me, this is a complex subject potentially. It's relatively technical as a modeling subject. But for me, my perspective is I'm not a computer hobbyist. I'm not an electronics hobbyist. I'm not a computer programmer by any means. I'm simply a model railroad layout builder who decided some features I wanted, had a need, and found a way to accomplish that. Again, now we talk about LCC more in general, but LCC, one thing we want to note is the NMRA made a very specific standard that they call LCC, but the layout control network is a fairly large tent of other possible solutions the model railroader could use. Here are some of them listed. But what I'm going to talk about is my particular choice was the CMRI system, which has an NMRA called MRI net. It has an MRA standard, but it's somewhat outside of the LCC definition right now. But the reasons I chose CMRI for myself was, number one, CMRI has been around and operating on layouts since the 80s at least. So it has a long track record. It has incredibly good documentation. If you look at my 3 volumes on the left picture, each of those volumes is an inch thick. Now, for some, that's somewhat off-putting. For me, especially with my work background, when I can go find an answer or dig into an issue deeper, it's much better for the way I work. The other thing I liked about it was do it yourself. If you look at the right-hand picture here, you can see that you purchase very high quality industrial grade circuit boards, but then you populate those boards with the discrete components yourself. So you can pace yourself, you can learn as you go. You don't have to front a whole bunch of money out front. And then the last reason I chose CMRI was it's extremely versatile. Anything that I can think that I might want to control remotely or automatically, we can do with a system like this. CMRI basically is a serial-based communication network. It's RS-232 converted to 485 that gives long communication distances. In the case of a layout, you're not going to need much more than the easy 1,000-foot of communication bus that the CMRI allows with 485 serial. It utilizes what we call dumb nodes, in that there's no programming located at the node. So when you make changes, you don't have to program each node separately. And in my case, I have 9 nodes. It does require a host computer because it's in a master to slave polled configuration. And like we discussed last time, what that simply means is the master computer polls for the inputs from the slave nodes throughout the layout. It then takes those inputs and calculates what to do with them, and then sends output instructions to each of the nodes to accomplish the various tasks that the model railroader asked to be done. Again, we distribute nodes on a layout because you want to minimize wire runs and you want easier troubleshooting. So devices and discrete components are connected directly to their serving node, and then that node is on a communication bus. Here's some examples. I have 9 nodes, some pictures of the general configuration. Now, I was deliberate not to go into how this stuff is wired up, how it's built, how it's all hooked together, but this gives you an idea of what can be involved in a layout control network, and specifically CMRI in my case. There's a lot more wiring under the layout than the layout might give away. A typical node starts with a serial I/O card. It handles the communication from the master computer, and then it distributes messages for its particular address to output ports and reports to the host computer through input ports. So the center card there, it's a super mini node in CMRI terminology. It has 48 output lines and 24 input lines. If you look at the input side, I color code my inputs orange so that at the node, it's very quick to identify what's going on. And you can see also included right next to the inputs is a motherboard with 12 track detectors. And they're collated here at the node, and I interrupt the south rail of the DCC booster is where those are wired through, although they're not hardwired with a pulse transformer type decoder or detector, but they're wound through on the south rail. Then on the left side, you've got blue indicating outputs for items such as the switch motors, obviously LEDs and panel lights on fascias and valances, and as well your signals. Those are generally outputs. Now there's twice as many outputs on a node as there are inputs, because that ends up being what most model railroads typically use, a lot more outputs than inputs. Then each node has a converted computer power supply. Computer items such as these nodes need stable, consistent voltage, meaning as the current increases or decreases, you can't have that voltage dropping because computer chips don't like that. So we use converted power supplies as a very cheap and convenient source of 12 volt, 5 volt, and 3.3 volt where as necessary. And LEDs love 5 volts or 3.3 volts, by the way. So what do I use CMRI for? What do I use my layout control bus for? I won't go into everything, but I'll highlight some of the main features I do. Number one, I use it for signaling. That's pretty obvious. But with that signaling, I have the benefit of, for example, one-click change from route type signal architecture to speed type signal architecture. And for those that are aware of prototype signaling, route signaling has slightly different aspects displayed to the train crew for a given rule book. And there are different rules as to what the crew does with that information that the aspect conveys. Route signaling in general is a West Coast or West half of North America type of signaling, and speed signals are generally, and this is general, are generally found on the East Coast or east of the Mississippi. In addition, we have call on or return to train signal modes, whereby rather than the dispatcher having to clear a control point every time a switch engine needs to make a move, he can set it to call on move, and the signals will automatically change as necessary as that switch crew moves back and forth through the control point. There's other features such as fleeting mode. Fleeting is where you want multiple trains heading the same direction in, say, 251D territory, where you have two-way traffic, but you don't want the dispatcher to have to clear signals every time a train goes by. So imagine in the case of a busy commuter rail situation where that traffic during rush hour can automatically clear as trains pass in one direction. So in addition to signaling, I utilize the bus is perfect for more complex track control. For example, NX plants. I have 3 NX plants on the layout, which are, it's a term the railroads use for entrance exit. They're more complicated interlocking plants that have multiple ways to get into the plant and multiple ways to exit the plant. So this automates, if you look at the picture in the lower left, you can see the yellow buttons. A train entering from the left needs to go to the yellow button exit on the right. It's an eastbound train, and that's all the dispatcher has to do is hit those 2 buttons and then release the signals, and it will reserve and align that route through the plant. That particular NX has 21 possible routings. In addition, simple interlocking, such as a single passing siding, is considered an interlocking in CTC. That is available for logic, whether or not to release a train or not. And then I use, for complex track control, I have automated staging ladder control as well. In addition, you can add other things, like I have my phone system is integrated. It's a party line system, but the control panels are designed to work on the bus so that You know who's calling you, you know who you want to call. And the system, one of the priorities was that when someone buzzes a phone, the computer sees it and will limit how long that buzz goes on so it doesn't drive us all crazy. In addition, we have automated staging control. It's dispatcher controlled. And once the dispatcher clicks on a button, certain things happen with automated staging. I'll go into a little bit of detail on that, but we don't have time for a full explanation. Then again, prototype turnout control, the last item on here. Now, when we talk about prototype turnout control, we're not necessarily talking about the scenery aspect like we're using realistic ground throws and switch stands. What we're talking about is how the switch crews and the dispatchers interact with controlled turnouts or switches on the main line and on controlled track, and how the system integrates locking logic before those turnouts are allowed to be activated. First, let's talk about the automated staging. On the dispatcher panel, when he opens up the e-staging yard, all he has to do is click one of the little red buttons for the track he wants a train to leave staging to come onto the layout. The system checks for ladder occupation. Then if it's clear, it aligns the ladder, because that's a fairly complex ladder for almost 12 tracks. Then the system through relays turns on the track power so that the locomotives don't have to sit in staging running. We generally don't want that, especially with sound locomotives, if we can avoid it, because that's a total draw on the DCC system, as most of us know. And then lastly, if all's checking well, it launches the train and it talks to the DCC system and says, okay, start this train, turn on the sound, and accelerate slowly for 12 inches, and then accelerate again. And then the train arrives on the layout, the model portion of the layout, and the system automatically stops the train. To do that, if you look under this staging yard, it's raised up to the ceiling right now. You can see we've got the track power relays here on the right. The computer, through those relays, activates the DCC power to the tracks. Then you've got the switch motor control card on the left. The computer talks to those control cards, and they in turn tell which switch motor to move when. There's the tortoise switch machines arrayed underneath. And of course, in N scale, like I mentioned before, you have to be careful because your distance between points is very small compared to, say, HO. So you have to carefully plan switch motor layout underneath. Then lastly, both of my 12-foot long staging yards are lifted when not in use up to the ceiling with an electronic lift. That way the wife can get to her storage room, or I would be in trouble. I haven't made that land grab yet. So I lift both of my 12-foot staging yards up with lifts. So now let's talk quickly or briefly about prototype turnout control. I'm using 4 primarily logic integrated types of turnout control that to simulate what the real railroad would do, starting with the hierarchy of power only. With power only, they're set up where only the dispatcher can throw those points. So in my case, I use them for staging yards. I'll use them for very critical junctions where the traffic has to be monitored carefully by the dispatcher. There are no provisions for line side control by a local crew. It's all by dispatcher remotely. Dual control, on the other hand, has provisions for both line side control and dispatcher control. And by default, those control points are under dispatcher control. But it has allowance for a crew to take manual control of those turnouts. Then the railroad has what's called automatic electrically controlled turnouts, whereby they've decided there's a case where a particular turnout near mainline controlled track is an additional hazard. And I'll explain briefly how that works and how the layout control bus helps me accomplish that. And then lastly, I'm using padlock only, whereby the turnout has to have a key or the computer won't allow those points to throw. And those are used on secondary but controlled sidings, for example, where speeds are slow and a switch crew is working. The benefit of prototype turnout control I have found after using it for quite a while is that it does add realism and it helps us avoid operator errors. No one wants to throw turnouts inadvertently under a moving train. Again, for this type of prototype activity with control points, dispatcher involvement, and line side prototype turnout control, the system has to utilize and works with prototype locking protocols. So every time an action is requested by the dispatcher, the system runs through locking protocols to see if it can unlock and allow that request. Software is really the only way to do that, especially on a model railroad. Again, this diagram here, a simple passing siding to a controlled siding is considered an interlocking and will work these 5 basic protocols every time a move is requested or a signal is requested to be cleared. So let's talk about dual control. A dual control turnout found generally in CTC territory at a control point where the railroad has decided that not only is the dispatcher need to control those points, there is a case to be made where a switch crew is going to operate back and forth through that control point. So the railroad provides trackside control of those motors. In order to do that, I've laid it out for operators in a 4-step process. The first thing is you call the dispatcher and you get permission to take that turnout in hand. Then once you've been granted permission, you insert the key, throw the toggle off motor mode into hand mode, and those are the terms that the railroads use. So now the dispatcher doesn't have motor control or remote control of that turnout, the line side crew does. And then the crew can toggle reverse normal as they see fit to get the work done. When the work is done, then they notify the dispatcher after they remove the key, set both toggles to motor and normal, and then they move on. And those types of controls actually do exist in a dual control turnout motor situation. We don't have time to go into the locking logic, but there's a number of things, whether the turnout is in motor control from the dispatcher or whether it's been taken into hand by the switch crew, that the system's going to look at before the system's going to allow those points to be moved. Things like, is time locking active? Is there a key request already? Is the control point occupied? Is the throw already normal or reversed? And then when the signals are integrated into the decision, there's a whole bunch of other decisions that the system is going to be making prior to allowing that crew to throw those points. In a model railroad environment, that's a matter of seconds. In the real railroads, it may be longer depending on how the circuitry is set up. Again, with centralized traffic control and automated or prototype turnout control, dispatchers and train crews don't make the decisions. The system does. All we can do is request those moves. And that's to keep the humans from being humans and making human mistakes. Now, another type of turnout control I'll talk about briefly is that automatic electrically locked turnout, which is not widely known or used in model railroad layouts, but it has pretty cool play value. And it has some actual, I mean, if you've got a quite valuable brass set of locomotives and train that you would really not like to have derailed because someone else pulled a train out in front of you and fall to the floor. I mean, there's practical uses besides the safety uses that the prototype would use. So in the case of an automatic electrically locked turnout, what the railroad is doing is saying, hey, we have a case where we've got a relatively high-speed main line, and we've got a spur emanating off of that main line. And if the main line is 20 miles per hour track speed or higher, we have to have a way of protecting from someone opening the points in the face of an oncoming train. Now, some railroads will, to avoid putting in an automatic electrically locked turnout, will actually require by rule that no train may totally vacate the main line on a spur. And by not allowing that, it means that at all times that track section would be detected as occupied. But in this scenario, say this is a large industrial park, and that train has totally left the main line to go work that industrial park. When that crew comes back to re-enter the main line, we have to have some kind of protection to keep them from opening the points and pulling out onto the main in the face of an oncoming train. So the automatically electrically locked turnout has provisions for logic before that crew can open the points. Is the next CP east or west occupied on either ends of that track section? Is there time locking westbound or eastbound? Is there already a train reserved by the dispatcher and the dispatcher simply forgot? Then the release logic, once the crew requests that set of points be opened, is the key request made? Is the timer already active? Is there a release section occupied? Is the main occupied? These kind of things are what the system is going to look at. Again, the operators, for my layout, it's a 4-step process. You call the dispatcher, say you want to take the points. Then you insert the key, and what the crew's waiting for is that yellow LED to illuminate after the system runs time and the checks it needs to run. And I've programmed in a 20 to 30 second delay. Typically in the prototype, you may have a 10 to 30 minute delay. And that's to allow, in case a dispatcher does send a train down the main and it was late, or there's some other extenuating circumstances the dispatcher may have forgotten about, the system will know and prevent the points from opening. Then once the light is lit, the crew can toggle reverse normal at will. So here's the scenario where the interlocking logic, the locking logic, protects the crew. In the case of, well, it would be obvious that the crew might be hearing that train coming, but let's say the train is pretty far away around the mountain. The crew can't see it, can't hear it. You can see where if they're not protected, they could inadvertently, if the dispatcher forgot that he had already reserved that track, they could inadvertently open those points. So the green indicates on a dispatcher screen that that track is already reserved. So the system knows that it's not going to allow that LED to come on. Now, a little enhancement for additional realism, most electrically locked turnouts have what's called a release section in the prototype. It's a section roughly 100 feet from the points that is individually detected, and it will know then if a train or part of a train is on that section. What it actually does is gives the crew an immediate release, where as soon as they key, they can move the points. So the assumption by the system is if there's a train there, that it's a switch train that needs to do work. And so it's going to grant the release right away. And so I program that into my electrically locked just as another fun toy. So well, that's your scenario. That's where if the crew knows to pull into the 100-foot release section, they'll get an immediate release as soon as they get permission and open the padlock. So that describes briefly 4 types of turnout control. So between the signals and the signaling modes and complex track control, and now prototype turnout control, I've got a little bit more realism that pretty much, in my opinion, only a layout control bus with software can do to enhance the fun. So that was an overview, brief overview. We don't have much time to go into much more, but I wanted to show you a few things that I do with a layout control bus and how it enhances our enjoyment of the layout. And I've incidentally found that as complex as it may seem some of those features are, that my young grandsons, for example, adapt almost immediately. And it's probably because they don't bring a preconceived notion of how things should be on a model railroad layout when they walk into the layout room. So they adopt to the system pretty quickly. So in summary, we talked about why, but as just as importantly, why we might not need a layout control bus. In addition, complexity is okay for the builder and the layout designer, but it's bad design if it ends up being complex to operate by the guests and the operators. So that is something I put into everything I tried to do. I certainly don't want operators in the layout room that are confused, having a hard time trying to figure out a very complicated system. We have found that it's not very complicated at all, except for the builder. And it doesn't take that much extra effort to get 90% through software if you've already got the hardware and the signals in place, for example. And that is pretty much it, Jim.
Chris, I really do appreciate you taking the time and frankly, going into the kind of detail that you have, because it certainly does put a different perspective on what you hear about LCC. I've never really understood it, tell you the truth. And a lot of the information that's out there, I don't think it really gives people the feel for what the new technology of LCC can bring to an existing railroad and to being able to run it prototypically. So thank you so very much for all this.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have any questions for Chris before we move on?
I think one clarification and one question. I mean, LCC generally refers to a very specific standard, which is I don't think what Chris is using. He's using a different layout control system, but I think that's probably important to realize. And what's interesting about what he's done is it's all centralized. That was really my question. So everything is back into the centralized system. So every key insertion is actually generating an IO pin on one of the Chubb boards. And
Correct.
every time, so I mean, it's a really interesting thought process, for everyone, that this says everything on the layout goes through the computer. Even though you might think you're doing something locally, you're actually asking the computer to do something and it's thinking about it before it does it, which is, I think is, again, Chris, is representative of reality in the railroad world. By the time you got to CTC, there was more and more of trying to build intelligence into the system to eliminate human errors.
Yeah, that the railroad spends enormous money to maintain a CTC or a controlled system like that, especially remotely through dispatching centers. So the idea is, how do we increase railroad efficiency but maintain a level of safety? You can have both, but you can't take one out of sight without perhaps dropping the other. So the idea is, how do we move more traffic safer and eliminate the human error? If you can imagine a train, multiple trains approaching an entrance exit plant, and a dispatcher human brain trying to figure out what's the safe move, who gets to go first, what are the ramifications if I mess that up. The system is there to help him not make a mistake. That's why the dispatcher screen, a control on the dispatcher screen, can be totally ignored. On a modern screen, it'll probably tell the dispatcher why he can't do what he's asking the system to do. And then the crew in the field just simply has to wait and talk to the dispatcher. Hey, why aren't you letting me go? Well, back out of the control point detector block so it clears the control point and I can let you go. And that is a model railroad thing.
So just out of curiosity, how do you mark control points for the engineers on your layout? Because that always seems to me to be one of the challenges you run into with the close proximity of our turnouts and that. How do you get the control points and the signals mapped? And I mean, do you have some, like, you know, I guess suggestions on that? Because understanding where those points are that you have to stop by is very critical, because if you overroll them and short out the next, then you're in the block and the CTC system gets into a mode where you can't do things.
Yeah,
So,
no one can clear the control point, clear trains to move if the control point is occupied, right? What I do, the first general rule in any signaled layout control system is, if it's CTC, the signal mast planted in the ground next to the track is the track circuit boundary indicator. So that's number one for where do I stop my train so that I don't get in trouble. And if you think about it from an engineer perspective, sitting in the cab of that locomotive, you wouldn't pull past the signal because you would never see it clear if you wanted to go. So you're always going to pull short. The other thing I do, Phil, is there is a ton of labeling and markers and a piece of paper a crew carries around that indicates every single control point. If you looked at one of my panel diagrams, all of the turnouts have a number. So the crews actually refer to the turnout by number, and the dispatcher has that same number on his screen. So that's how they know where they are or what control point. So I give them the option. They can call the control point by name, by number, or by OS number, either one of those three. And they're clearly marked all over the layout.
thanks.
You bet.
Well, Chris, we really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time and by being here this evening. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Jim.
Well, now I'd like to move to another modeler that a lot of you know, Bill Banter. Bill owns a company called Banta Modelworks, as you're probably familiar with. And he's going to be starting next week a build along of one of his caboose kits, which is an On30. So Bill, welcome.
Thank you.
I really do appreciate you doing this for us, Bill, because I hear an awful lot of people talk about On30, and I know there's a lot of interest in it. We haven't had anybody do a build along in On30. What is so special about On30? Why are you producing kits in that scale?
That's a good question, but I think kind of started when Bachman began their On30 bit to rolling stock, and seemed like a good thing to do to add to what they were doing. We started doing cab kits and then different conversions for their flat cars. And essentially what we're talking about here is this is the caboose, and it simply goes on top of a Bachman On30 flat car. So On30 is interesting because it lends itself to a lot of modifying and changing things, making things your own, and not really following a specific prototype. I think that's attractive to a lot of people.
I've heard that On30 is almost you're designing your own railroad, but you're keeping as much of the prototype look as you possibly can within what you want your own railroad to look like.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. I think also there's a lot of people that really go beyond even prototype and making some really crazy stuff. But being different from following a prototype is important to them. It's narrow gauge. It's got a kind of a funky look and feel to it. So it's quite attractive to a lot of people.
But the modeling in it, the building of the models and everything, there's no difference in that, is there?
A kit is a kit, right?
Yeah.
So you're just going to sit down and build something. And if you're building from a kit, it's really no different than putting a building together for the layout. It's just more so the enjoyment of building.
Gotcha. Any special tools that anybody needs to get on hand before before you start the build along next week?
No, just normal modeling tools with a hobby knife, some glue, emery boards for sanding, and that's about it.
Okay. Any special painting or any preparation from that standpoint?
Not really. I'll go into a little bit about that. Generally, I don't get too deep into painting and staining and that kind of thing, and the kits, and especially in the instructions. But we'll touch on it a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Want to talk about your company a little bit? What else do you produce besides this On30 stuff?
Lots of structures. And cab kits, the works. Everything from HO scale up to live steam stuff. Right on.
I've heard that some of the manufacturers have seen some real growth, particularly with this pandemic situation. Has that been your experience?
I think initially when everybody was tied down, couldn't go anywhere, we saw a lot of growth in that area. But now that people are out and about, it's kind of slacked off a bit. So.
Okay. Well, I'm really looking forward to this, and I thank you so much for being here this evening. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week when you start the build along.
We'll be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this evening. I have a couple of announcements I want to make. And Pat, if you could give me the spotlight again. One of them is I want to talk about a new show that we're starting. And the first one is going to be tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. You'll have to log into YouTube at 7 o'clock. Our channel is New Tracks Modeling on YouTube. I hope you'll subscribe to it, because then you'll get all of the advanced notifications about this new show. This new show is called Modeling Lifestyles. It's about people that are, yes, they're excellent modelers. Yes, they are model builders. Yes, they love the hobby, but they have made significant contributions, not just in the modeling of building models, but also in the promotion and the development of our hobby over the course of time. If you've ever wanted to meet a modeler like John Allen and talk to him about the contributions that he made to the hobby, or Frank Ellison, or some of the other really great modelers that we hear about, we've read about in the past, well, those are the people that we're going to be trying to get to come on the show and talk to us. The show will be an hour plus. How much plus? I don't know. It depends on who the modeler is and how the discussion goes. The format of the shows are going to be, we're going to have a modeler and 3 of his friends who have known him and know him today and have worked with him and seen his modeling and talked with him been a part of his life for quite a while. And we're going to sit around like a bunch of people just getting to know each other and trying to find out who this modeler is that we may have heard about, but many of us may never have had an opportunity to really sit down and talk to before and meet. I hope that you enjoy this concept. I hope you enjoy the show. The first one is tomorrow night. It features Alan Littlefield, who is an OM30 modeler. And you'll hear a lot about OM30 and about how people who model in that scale feel about it, why it is so popular in certain areas, why a lot of people are being attracted to it. I have a short video I'd like for Pat to run for you now that talks about this new show. So Pat, if you could run the video, I appreciate it.
I do not have it. Somebody got it?
Chris, if you have that video, if you could run it, I would appreciate it.
Let me take a look here real quick. Looks like Phil's got it.
Thanks, Phil.
Welcome to the Modeling Lifestyle, where we celebrate how modelers have embraced their modeling and friendships as a lifestyle. We discuss how modeling can become a life passion and lead to lifelong friendships. The goal of the modeling lifestyle is to preserve the modeling and interests of leading modelers in the modeling industry. The modeling lifestyle is sponsored by NGMC, who believes that through bringing hobbyists together with both information and modeling, the hobby will grow stronger with more model builders than ever. NGMC, which started as Narrow Gauge Modeling Company, is focused in 1/4 inch scale across hobbies. NGMC is a market leader in 1/4 inch scale with a range of products from over 50 vendors. In 2021, NGMC became the largest reseller of out-of-production model paint in North America with over 9,000 bottles in stock. And now to Jim Kellow, MMR, host of the Modeling Lifestyle.
I love the sound of a whistle.
And that's what our show is going to be about. And I can't thank Kevin McCumber enough for sponsoring our show. I think that it's going to be really something to see. We're getting an awful lot of people interested in the show. And I hope that you'll join us tomorrow night and be a part of it. As I say, it won't be on Zoom. It'll only be on YouTube. And our YouTube channel is New Tracks Modeling. So if you'll go and subscribe to that channel, then you'll get the advance notification about each one of our shows. We're going to have a new show every 2 weeks on Thursday evenings. So I hope that you like them. I hope that you enjoy participating in them. And we will have someone watching the YouTube chat function so that anybody has a question or wants to make comments and so forth, they'll be picked up, and we'll ask those questions or make the comments for you live on that show. So again, thank you so much for coming this evening. I appreciate it so much. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. That's the most important part of the shows. If you haven't, I hope that you'll go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and subscribe. The shows that we do produce on Zoom on the Wednesday night at 7 o'clock and Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock. We send out the login links to everyone who is subscribed to our website for Zoom. So if you want to join us on Zoom for those shows, please subscribe to our website, newtracksmodeling.com. And again, for our YouTube channel, it's New Tracks Modeling. And if you'll subscribe to the channel and ring the bell, and then you'll get all the advance notices and be able to use the chat function to join us live through YouTube. So thanks so much again. And with that, we'll end the show this evening and go to the after show. Clark Cooning, MMR, who normally does the after show for us, is not here this evening. So you're stuck with me again for the after show. And I'll open it up for anyone that has any comments or suggestions, or anybody that's new to the show that hasn't been here before. that would like to introduce themselves.
Hey, Jim, this is Phil. Just one comment. If on the video, if you noticed all of the engines, those are all Alan's creations. What we're going to do is we'll modify that over time with other models as other modelers come in. So if you thought those were intriguing, that'll be a lot of what Alan will be talking about with his friends. And I'll also put in the chat, I'll put a link to the video feed point on YouTube. So anyone who wants it, this will be the link for the live YouTube video tomorrow.
And as I say, this is something new for us, and we're experimenting with it. And so are the people. Alan just happens to be our guinea pig for this, and he's having some fun with it. We've had 2 practice sessions so far that have been, the reason we've had 2 is the first one didn't go well. The second one is still a little iffy, but I'm sure tomorrow night is going to be a lot of fun for everybody. Anybody else have any comments or talk about anything you'd like?
Yeah, Jim, it's Pat here.
Yes, sir.
I just want to thank Chris and Chris Smith and Phil and all the boys there that put a presentation together and put it on tonight. It was quite interesting and very informative. And I want to thank those that stood in for me while my power was out. I didn't even think I was going to get on, but I found out there's a few things I had missed. So anyway, thank you very much.
Well, I tell you, tonight has been an interesting night because Phil couldn't be here to start. Pat had a storm come through his town that destroyed some of it, so he lost power for quite a while. Alan is brand new as volunteer, trying to run the show for the first time. Chris Blackmar filled in from the Saturday show to try to help us get something started. So I think we're fortunate that we got a show on the air at all. And I want to thank everybody who participated because it really was a joint effort tonight, just trying to get something going. Because if it could go wrong, I think it did at the start of the show.
Thanks.
Jim, it reminds me of the old movie Airport 75 when Karen Black is in the cockpit and she says, "There's no one left to fly the plane."
Well, that's about how I felt there for a while, I'll tell you.
I was having a major fit.
I would like to make
let's face it, it's part of the fun of doing the show, I think. It's a live show, done it for a long time now. And the volunteers that have done the show with me, we together have probably made every mistake known to man in trying to put this show on, and probably more than once, many of them. But it's been fun, and we survived it. And so far, knock on wood, we haven't missed getting a show on when it was supposed to go on. So got to be doing something right.
Jim, I'd like to make one other quick comment. And those of you that are on the Saturday show with me for the scratch building, and you had ordered a 3D print of the ice machine from Heath, you should have those in your hands by now. And Rich, I'll get together with you over the phone. We'll discuss that broken part. If you don't have your print, please let me know via email, and I'll go through and check the tracking on them and everything. But I believe everybody's should be delivered at this point in time.
Order some cupcakes.
Yeah. The 2 possible exceptions are the gentleman up in Canada, and I'm dealing with you guys separately, and you kind of know what's going on. But anyway, we've got the 3D prints, and I'm looking forward to seeing them painted up.
Have you gotten yours yet, Chris?
Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, what happened was we actually had all of them for the US. Everybody that ordered them gave me their addresses, and then I just had Heath send me one big package with everybody's prints in it. And then I turned around and remailed them back out to everybody.
Gotcha.
Here in the US, so that cut down on the cost. And for those of you that noticed, and I've already gotten 3 or 4 emails back on the cards, but Heath just is not charging anybody for it, but I did include his address on that 3x5 card if you wanted to send him a donation for his materials and time, because remember, he designed them. If you wanted to get your zone printed out, we do have the CAD designs and to be able to do a 3D print on the NewTracks website there. So they're really nice looking machines. It's an ice making machine that goes inside the ice house. Anyway, with that, I'll let you go here, and I got to go this evening, gentlemen. So everybody have a good evening, and I look forward to seeing everybody on Saturday.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks so much for your help tonight, Chris. Anybody else have anything that I can talk about?
Hey, Jim, the title, The Modeling Lifestyle, isn't that the title of some ads in the back of Vogue magazine? Are we going to be seeing Phil walking the runway in a tutu or something?
No,
sorry, I just had to say it.
No. Pat's already said that he wanted to do that.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
He's got his own outfits picked out.
Wait till Halloween.
Oh, golly.
Looks like a good show.
Well, I hope it is. It's going to be something different, and so far the people that I've talked to about it and asked to be on the show have said, it's unfortunate that you didn't start this earlier, because in certain cases, we've lost some really outstanding modelers fairly recently, within the last 2 or 3 months. And I'm sorry that we didn't get them on. I'm sorry that we couldn't do that. But, we got the idea a couple of months ago, and it's just taken a while to try to put it together, and just, trying to get the format down that made sense, and trying to figure out how we were going to deal with the modeling side versus the other things that the modelers are involved in. I mean, Alan Littlefield, Alan is a really great artist in his own right, but he puts on 2 shows a year. Some people call them events. Other people call them reunions, like family reunions. And for a lot of modelers, it's a must-go-to show. It's maybe one of the few around the country that they will attend, but they'll travel considerable distances, many of them, to make sure that they're there every time Alan puts on one of his shows. They're that popular. And so we're going to talk to him about that, and why they're so different, and why people, think the way they do about them. Because it's unusual for people to call a train show like going to a family reunion, but that's how they feel about his shows. And it's something really different that he's done to create that environment and that atmosphere.
I can hear a pin drop out there.
Well, I'm waiting for other comments and discussion. I don't know how to do this after show that well compared to Clark. Clark seems to get it going, and people just jump right in. So,
woohoo!
Jim, this is Jeff Jordan with a number of modelers assembled. Maybe somebody can give me a suggestion for something I'm working on. I'm currently building a kit for an O-scale water tank for my narrow gauge railroad, and the kit suggests that the tank bands be made with fishing line, but that doesn't work for my prototype. My prototype, the bands are more like belts or straps, obviously made out of metal, and I'm looking for ideas on how to model those straps. I thought about using, like Tamiya masking tape, but I'd end up using up, I don't know how many rolls of that stuff to get enough bands on the tank. And the only other thing I've been able to think of is maybe evergreen styrene strips, but wanted to see if anybody else had any other suggestions of how they might have put bands on an O-scale water tank. It takes an amazing amount of material because the tank scales out as 24 feet diameter. And so using some geometry, you need 19 inches of material for each band. And with like 20 to 25 bands, boy, that's a lot of inches.
Up here, a lot of us are in ON3, and we've built the similar tanks, and we use Mylar for those strips for the bands. It's very pliable, it's thin, it would scale out to about the thickness of a metal band. And do you have the fasteners in the kit?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and then you're away to the races. If you can find yourself some at an art store or a drafting supply store, should have some Mylar.
Does it come in sheets and then you cut your own strips?
Yes. You can tape it down and cut it with a straight edge and a X-Acto knife or a scalpel.
Oh, okay. And that would cover the mileage too, because you just take a sheet and cut lots of strips out of it.
That's right. Yes.
I like that suggestion. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, it looks like Bill has walked away from the screen here. I was going to tell him I just completed his kit for the Vance Junction section house. And hopefully I'm working on finishing up Vance Junction. So it may be on June 29th, I'll unveil my Vance Junction, including his section house.
How'd you like that kit?
It was a little bit of a challenge because I was glad I built several of his other kits first, which came with much more detailed instructions. This one comes with just 2 pages of instructions and a number of illustrations. And so from building his other kits, including the warehouse, which you've seen, but also one of the mine kits that had a lot more instruction, I knew how to put it together. When the instructions just kind of said, do this and didn't have the explanation. But it's a beautiful finished model. Oh, here he is now. Bill, I was just discussing the fact that I just recently completed your O-scale Vance Junction section house kit. And am very pleased with the finished model. I mean, with all the details there, including, that the whole second floor is shingled. It would have been a challenge to build any other way. And so I'm very happy with the finished building, but I was talking about the fact that I also was happy that I had built several of your other kits first, which came with more extensive instructions. The 2 pages of instructions that come with that kit presume a fair amount of prior knowledge or experience, and having built the prior kits, they really helped me build that one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the very early kits before digital cameras, and my early days. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. The early kits, 2 pages of instructions. Good luck to you. Call me if you got a problem. I'm moving to Brazil, that kind of thing. So, but there was a point in time where digital cameras became a little bit easier to use and get the photos in. So, over time, it's naturally going to improve. And I think the Cimarron Mine Kit, when we did that was really the first one that really had good photographs through, and it's probably when I really upped the game on the instructions. Some of the early ones, it was, okay, here's some drawings and here's some part numbers. Yeah.
Well, like I said,
certainly buildable.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I've finished into a beautiful model. I'm very, very happy with it. But I was glad I had previously built, I think it's Little Creek Mine, and also the warehouse.
Yeah.
And having built both of those, they gave me the skills I needed and the knowledge about how your kits went together to enable me to build the Vance Junction section house and have a very, very presentable finished model. But boy, am I tired of applying shingles.
Yeah, it's not my favorite thing to do either.
Bill, I've heard people say that for a manufacturer, developing the instructions for a kit is the most difficult part of producing the kit. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. You can go through and design it, and I really enjoy the designing and the building. And then what I do is I'll take a set of production parts and start writing instructions as I build. And man, it can take 3 and 4 and 5 days for a basic kit. And I'm working on one now that in 120.3, and I've got a good 2 weeks into the instructions so far. And I've just set it aside for another week before I get back to it. It gets, if you don't try to explain everything as well as you can, you start getting the phone calls and say, well, what did you really mean? So I try to get as much in it as I can at the front end. Yeah, it's certainly intense. That's a fact. Yeah.
I think that's one reason why the build-alongs on the show have some popularity now, because the people are looking at the modeler on the show who's building the model as a crutch. So if they have a question, they've got somebody that they can see and ask the question to, rather than just kind of struggle it out themselves.
Yeah, I agree.
Anybody else got any comments about the kits that are out there, the difficulty of building the model kits of today?
Oh, it's so much.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's so much fun to watch Martin put together an old kit. It reminds me of what it was like to build structure kits all the many years ago when you opened the box and had a couple of sheets of wood and a couple of sticks and you attempted to make that look like a building. The laser cut kits have just so dramatically changed structure construction today that they're so precisely cut. The windows are already cut out, the doors are already cut out, they're tabbed, they fit together, they end up nice and square. It gives you a tremendous running head start on the kits, and there's several producers out there of laser cut structure kits. Bill's kits I really think are excellent, and there are a couple of other laser cut kits, and I really enjoy putting them together, knowing that I'm not going to have to re-engineer the kit, that the parts are going to fit together. I'm not going to spend an interminable amount of time trimming, sanding, just to make it go together the way it's supposed to go together.
Something else that I hear is that people have favorite manufacturer. I have a friend that every time Bar Mills comes out with a new kit, they want to be first in line. They'll buy it. They don't care what it is. They just want to buy one and build it because Bar Mills is the only manufacturer that they buy kits from. Is anybody else like that? I mean, how common is that? Because I do hear people tell me that, I've heard other people say, I do have this manufacturer, or I only buy from these two manufacturers. I've heard that.
Well, I know some people that collect kits, and that's the key. And they don't have no intention of building them. They just collect them, and for the artistry, it's in the kit itself, and the instructions and the plans. So some of the kit manufacturers put a lot of castings in, like Fine Scale Miniature back in the day. I know there's almost like an association, or not association, but a group of people that follow each other on the internet that collect those kits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would not complain, just like Jeff was saying, the number of manufacturers we have in the kits available to us nowadays, it's so wonderful to have all those kits. And so I know we always want something different and something else, but when I first got into ON3, we were scrounging around. I was going scrounging around looking for old kits at shows down in the States. Couldn't get anything in Canada really. So I used to look forward to going to Kimberton, Pennsylvania, and places like that, and getting the older kits, Tom York, and plastic miniatures, people like that. But nowadays, after the 3D printing and like you said, with all the windows and that cut out, I have a building, I'm going to be a scratch building. I've ordered the windows, but I got to cut all the holes out. And there's 54 windows in that building. And there's doors too. So
You ought to know what you're doing by then.
yeah, or it's going to hit the wall at some point.
There's a simple answer. It's a cry cut.
The cricket?
Or cricket, if you want to call it that. Whatever you want to call it, cricket or cry cut or whatever it is. But you go buy one of those and use that to cut it.
It depends on the thickness of the material, though, doesn't it, Phil?
Yeah, but they'll cut through most wood that we use as siding, and unless you're building it as an individual board building.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to cheat on this one and use scribe to siding. And it's an O scale, so the siding is reasonably thick, and I will be putting on a backing too, because of the size of the building. But if I was doing it in styrene, I'd do something. I think it was John Nerich that introduced it back when he was building buildings for Troy, New York, large buildings in styrene, and he'd build it in blocks and put it together, so you didn't have to sit there and cut out the windows. He would cut these blocks of styrene in between the windows and above and below, and then glue them on. And then put a siding on, the brick siding, whatever it was. But that was a good idea. But I just can't do that in the wood.
Let me ask you guys this. What do you consider a craftsman kit? What does that mean?
One that has great difficulty to put together.
Yep. You'll get several, more than several evenings of entertainment and enjoyment out of it. But
it's when you open the box and take one look and close it again and come back 3 weeks later.
Hey, if you run out, I got some. Oh man!
I guess when I got into the hobby seriously, and I was in HO, Campbell kits were considered
there you go.
Craftsman kit.
Yeah.
This is the only thing on the shelves up here, but I belong to a club, and we built so many of those kits. And it was such a variety from residential housing to stores to industries.
We have one fellow down here in Chatham that bought every one of them and it came out, and he's assembled every one of them.
Yeah.
His layout is just full of them.
We used to claim a craftsman kit. You'd open them up and there'd be a block of wood in there with a chisel, and the directions said remove everything that doesn't look like a caboose.
Oh, brother.
That's not far from my locomotive workshop kit.
Oh.
I sent you that notice about P&D hobbies, just so in case you wanted to stock up on drives and whatnot.
Yeah, I saw that. Although I guess they're going to continue manufacturing out of their basement or something, because they said that they'll continue to sell online.
Oh, well, that's good.
So apparently they're just closing the brick and mortar store.
Yeah.
Oh.
They're selling showcases, everything.
That was a great model railroad store, though. I used to go in. I was in there at least once a week when I lived in Michigan. And the people that you met there, the other modelers that were hanging around, it was just, I mean, it was like going to a train show every time you went into the damn hobby shop out there. I mean, it was just there were always 2 or 3 or 4 people hanging around. And the staff knew if you had a question, they had answers for you, whatever it was. It was just.
And they went to every show.
And people used to bring models that they were working on, and people would comment on them. Well, you ought to do this or that or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just a really exciting place to be, just to be there and to see who else was there when you went in. It was just a place to go, not just on the weekends, but any day of the week you could find that.
I think the pandemic has played a real role in this. A lot of the guys closed down for a year or so, and they just can't handle it afterwards. It's a lot of brick and mortar to pay for.
I don't think it's just brick and mortar. I think it's finding employees. I think that's part of the problem a lot of the places are having too. I hear that from other hobby shop owners, that it's not just the cost of the store, it's where getting employees that want to work.
That I don't understand, but that's what Al Collins is getting parts like screws and the different parts that he needed to make a sander and a slicer. And he was having problems getting that stuff. And like you said, now all of a sudden he's starting to accumulate, and he's got like around $100,000 worth of inventory sitting on the shelf in little parts. And
Yeah.
he's been building like crazy lately, but to catch up on his orders and that. But and that's a lot of people are talking about that, and I can't understand why. And that would to me would be like machinist. I guess maybe it's all CNC machines making bolts and but why people didn't go back to those jobs, I can't fathom it.
Well, and it's simple stuff too. It's not just machinists. It's people just stuffing envelopes, putting the parts in the envelopes. They can't find people that want to do that anymore.
Well,
and what gets me about it, I keep thinking to myself, well, how are these people living? I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, I don't want this job. I'm bored. I'm leaving and goodbye. And I never want to see you again. So, okay, now I'm sitting at home. How in the world am I supporting myself?
Maybe a thought might cross the path of crime pays or something. I don't know. Supporting themselves. Yeah, exactly. You wonder, because the government, gave out some assistance during the COVID time, but I think that's all over now. So.
Yeah, but why aren't they going back to work now? Then I mean, why? Because it's down in the States, at least, I hear stories. Restaurants are closing because they can't find people.
Yeah.
They're not opening those hours they used to be because they can't find people.
Well, a lot of people actually, there's record numbers of people actually starting their own businesses, working out of their garage, out of their basement. They're on Etsy selling stuff.
Yeah.
And they're doing better doing that. Well, working in a restaurant in Pennsylvania, if you're on tips, the hourly wage is under $2 an hour plus tips. So you can probably sell some model trains built in your basement for better prices than that.
Yeah, probably could.
Or whatever it is you're,
yeah,
macrame dog uniforms. I don't know. People will buy weird, crazy stuff. I mean, go on Etsy and take a look someday. It's amazing. You can find the doggone this stuff on there, and people buy it. I mean, that company is hosting a ton of craft-based, one-person businesses, and they're doing well. It's
more power to them. I think that's wonderful. If you want to become entrepreneurs, I think that's great. But
that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily show up in the employment and facts and figures.
Yeah,
it kind of flies below the radar a little bit. And
they say unemployment now is less than 4%.
Yeah, it's lowest it's been in probably like 50 years.
When I was in school, 4% was normal unemployment. That wasn't any big deal. If it's less than that, then that's a tight labor market. But that also has to say that, compared to 2 years ago when we had all these other people working, there's a tremendous amount of people that for some reason gave up jobs and went home. And I find it hard to believe all of them have become entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
No, they found other jobs. They found better jobs. A lot of them. My son just changed jobs. This past 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. No,
his salary went up like 150%.
Yeah, I don't doubt
because
that.
He's got qualifications and they needed somebody. So he jumped.